Welcome to the I Told You So podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Cole. I started this podcast because I noticed an erosion of societal discourse and how normal conversations are often fueled by polarization. The I Told You So podcast offers an opportunity for healthy discourse and effective discussions. I select topics to discuss with listeners and guests of the I Told You So podcast. Listeners and guests predict what will happen in the future. I track those predictions and announce who predicted accurately when those predictions become true. The podcast offers topics where listeners and guests can participate in discussions with the goal of predicting the future so they can proudly say, I told you so. My guests for this episode are Barry and Charlotte Schartz. They were married in May of 1971. Barry graduated from Kansas State University with a Bachelor of Science degree in zoology in 1970 and Emporia State University with a Master of Science degree in aquatic biology in 1975. Charlotte graduated from Kansas State University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Education Curriculum Development in 1971 and Emporia State University with a Master of Science degree in Career Education in 1975. Barry and Charlotte were married in 1971, like I mentioned, and moved to Kingman, Kansas in 1975 after they earned their master's degree. Barry taught science at Nashville Zenda High School from 1975 to 1983 and was chairperson for the science department at Goddard High School from 1984 to 2005. Charlotte taught science and math in the Kingman schools until 2005. Barry and Charlotte were active in and held many local, state, and national offices in the National Education Association, or NEA, and they were very involved in national and state math and science organizations. Barry gathered many honors, including being named one of two Kansas Teacher in Space semifinalists in line to fly on the Challenger Space Shuttle in 1986. Well, fate would have it that Barry did not ride on that shuttle. Barry and Charlotte raised two children who now live in California. Barry and Charlotte retired in 2005 after 30 years in secondary education. They moved to Manhattan, Kansas, the day after the last day of school in 2005 and have been exceptional supporters of Kansas State University athletics in their retirement years. On this episode, Barry and Charlotte Schartz and I discussed the importance of traveling and especially encouraging young people to travel. One of the Schartz's favorite quotes is from St. Augustine. The world is a book. Those who do not travel read only a page. So Barry and Charlotte, thanks for being a guest on the I Told You So podcast. Let me start by asking you, what allowed you to travel as much as you did? And where did you get this travel bug that started in your lives?
If the early bug came from my family, and we, any National Geographic show that came on, it was always fascinated. But growing up on the farm, we didn't have much time to travel because we had to milk the cows. So when we did travel, it was a huge adventure.
I had no opportunities to travel as I was growing up. I lived on a remote farm that was no running water, kind of very, very low socioeconomic. And my first time going anywhere was on my high school senior class trip. After graduation, we boarded a bus and took off for Niagara Falls and Washington, D.C. And that was my first time to be outside the state of Kansas. The bug got us because we got so involved in NEA, and we became delegates to conventions all over the United States, and we took advantage. we took advantage of that.
Also through professional organizations. You met people and you talked about different things. What can we do to help students? Those kinds of things.
What can your kids do with my kids? All those kinds of things. Are we jumping ahead?
Hang on.
No, that's good. So you mentioned organizations. So, when you're traveling, you're maybe working with agents, you're working with organizations. You have to know, who's legitimate, who's really giving you good advice. So maybe talk a little bit about legitimate advice and with these professional organizations.
One of the main things I remember is I was sitting there reading an NSCA, National Science Teachers Association journal. And way in the back in small print, it talked about Project Lava. What's that? Lava, learning about volcanic activity. So I said, hey, Barry, it's in Hawaii. You want to go? And we looked at each other and I said, I taught earth science. He taught a little bit of earth science. It was like, yeah, let's go. Let's make it happen.
She twisted my arm.
Yeah. So we went to Project Lava. We lived a week on the rim of Kilauea with a group of science teachers from around the world. There was a group of us who were sitting around one night after we had just had a fantastic day. And we said, where should we go next? And somebody said, well, I've heard of this geology professor in Iceland. He's from Iceland. He's an Icelandic, he's a 32nd generation Icelander, and he teaches volcanology. Let's go. So 2 summers later, we ended up in Iceland for 2 weeks, going with Harold Sigurdsson through his homeland, climbing volcanoes, hard hat, the whole bit. We sat around in the evening. Where should we go next? Then we went to Italy. Then we went to Greece. Then we went to Costa Rica. Then it just kept going. And some of that original group, we shared information with our kids, with each other. That was one of the things that got us started traveling around the world studying volcanoes.
Yeah, I also, through meetings in the National Science Teachers Association, met people from kind of different corners of the United States, and we put our heads together. And what could we do to get kids motivated to really get into learning about not only science, but cultures and different kinds of people, and working with them. And we put together college courses that took us into Central and South America to study in the rainforest, not only the nature that was there, but the people that were there.
He's talking about setting up his own trip. I bumped into a group called American Student Travel, and they would plan the trips. They would do the organization stuff. And so I took my middle schoolers to Washington, D.C. I took probably 7 or 8 different trips, one to Florida, to Disney. We just went different places, but American Student Travel was they were my guarantee that I was okay. I wasn't going to get ripped off. It wasn't a scam.
They were legit. That was her safety net. So in the future, if somebody is interested in doing these kinds of things, you can put the trip together kind of by yourself. You need to get a hold of somebody where you're going to have them kind of coordinate things, where Charlotte is having an organization or a company that actually does that.
They picked the hotel. They had the buses for us. They picked us up at the airport. They transported us from one scenic spot to one another scenic spot. So that was a safety net when you're traveling with a group of middle schoolers.
Yeah, it's important to consider. We talked about the travel bug a little bit, and I'll just tell you, I caught that bug kind of later in my life, but um, when I started traveling for business and realized how much I love it. And so I'd say probably the last 20 years of my life, I think I've probably been to 27 different countries. I think I've been on the campus of 321 different universities. A lot of that's for business, some of that's for vacation. Um, but most of my career has been in higher education, so I'm working with researchers all around the world. So it was fun to see where they work, where their universities are. But yeah, one of the things when I taught classes, I would always encourage the college students to figure out a way to do a study abroad trip. So I know you're talking about, helping high school students and middle school students to travel abroad and travel even the United States. But I realized just through my teaching that many students at Kansas State University had never even been outside of the United States at all. So I encourage them to get over on the other sides of the oceans if they can. Find a way to travel through study abroad, even if it's just for a couple of weeks or just a summer, because it allows students, and you'll probably agree with this, it allows young people to grow and develop in ways that they can't even imagine. So they're
Can I
able.
insert here? Can I insert here?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
Our grandson took advantage of a Rotary foreign exchange program when he was a junior in high school, and he spent a year in Sweden. What an experience. To this day, he still is in contact with the Swedish family, with the friends from his junior year in high school. They invited him back for their senior high commencement. So those kinds of opportunities, that was thanks to Rotary.
And when he came to K-State after his freshman year, he decided to study in Germany for his sophomore year
of college. That was global campus at that time.
That was, yes. And of course, COVID hits, circumstances, borders close, and he, in a sense, gets trapped over there and is actually still there.
He's still there.
He has graduated from K-State. He's had a job. He's now back in graduate school over there.
That's incredible. So I'm glad to hear you talk about Rotary. And the reason why is because I'm the current president of the Manhattan Kanza Rotary Club. And what you're referring to is the Rotary Youth Exchange Program. And so we participated in that before. We send students from Manhattan High School. We get students from abroad to come and go to class and be students at Manhattan High School. So it's a great program, and it does enlighten students. It really allows them an opportunity to learn about different cultures, learn about our society. And really, to me,
Yes.
these travel experiences, especially for young people, it allows them to grow and develop in ways, like I mentioned earlier, that they can't even imagine right now. But once they do it, they also get what we call the travel bug, and they want to experience more cultures. They want to experience more people. They want to experience different food. They want to experience different languages,
different politics, different religions, different
all that. Yeah.
The whole bit.
And if they're kind of unsure if they want to travel or, leave the United States, through Rotary, have a foreign student come in and live with them. That's a way to get that foreign experience.
Yeah.
That's
so
right.
Yeah, we had no experience with Rotary at all until he did that. So I'm sold. Testimonial here.
That's great. So let's talk about some places that you've been. So I mentioned the 27 countries I've been to, all the university campuses I've been on. Tell the listeners a little bit of how you figured out where to go. and how you worked out those experiences.
Well, we've been to over 100 countries over a course of 50 years. How did we figure out where to start? A lot of it started with our travels through National Education Association to the different representative assemblies. And they would have speakers there. And so it's kind of like, wow, this is fun. And we always took our kids. Our children were the first convention my grandson attended. No, our son, for Tim. The first convention he was on the escalator with Jimmy Carter back in 1980.
Long time ago.
81-ish. Yeah. So, they traveled with us everywhere. To all these meetings. We always had a way. A lot of times we took a relative along to babysit. That was manageable. That was cheaper. So expense is a big factor. Expense is a big factor.
That expense probably drove, especially early travel, drove where or what we were doing, because we would always try to tie that back into some educational outcome for us that we could either use in the classroom or we could use to help certify us.
Yeah, we got points. Like when we went on these volcanology trips, we did the paperwork before we went, turned it into the school district. We said, this is what we plan, this is what we hope to get, this is what we plan to get. And then when we came back, we said, okay, this is what we got. We did this. And then they gave us I don't know what they're called now. They were IDP, individual development points to recertify. And if you work it right, if you just spin it right, some of it is tax deductible.
Yeah.
That was a big thing too, because the district didn't pay a thing when we went on our trips.
Sometimes the organizations would pay a little bit. But there was another thing too. We were divers, so
scuba divers.
We went to places where we could dive, and it became, well, let's go dive in the Atlantic, then let's go dive in the Pacific, and then let's go dive in the Indian Ocean.
In the Mediterranean.
So
yeah.
And
any of you students want to come along? And a student group would evolve. So we took students all over the place.
Well, they were also, I taught coral reef ecology and rainforest ecology, and they were getting college credit.
Yeah, that's a great benefit for the students. So hopefully we do have some young people listening, but I'm wondering if we have teachers listening. If we do have teachers listening, I'm hoping that they're encouraged by what you're saying, that will allow them to take trips with their students. So a lot of teachers are interested in teaching recertification or licensure or recertifying their licenses. So were you able to do that in your travels?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. These IDP points kept us from needing to spend 2 weeks in a classroom in a university somewhere. Another thing that works good, hey, teachers out there, if you need some, if you're in history. Oh, shoot. I thought it was off. If you're interested in history, go take a 2-week, do a symposium or some kind of thing in Berlin, the history. Go to London for drama and the arts. Go to Peru for anything on the Incas. Just go somewhere and take a class there rather than staying here. Broaden your horizons. You'll want to go back.
Yeah, so maybe with all, you probably have no idea how many students you've taken on these trips over your years. It's probably hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So, um, tell the listeners a little bit about what you saw in them. So, did you see these changes happening then? When they saw things for the first time, they experienced these things for the first time. Did Tell us about those experiences. How did you see that? What does that do for students? And then not only that, but I'm sure you probably, stayed in touch with these students over the years. And
Oh yeah.
some students probably, write you and say, thanks for that experience. I'm so glad I did that. And these are the places I've been since then. So maybe share with the listeners a little bit about what you saw in the students that changed them.
What? Geez. Did we lose you? Are you still there, Ben?
I'm still here.
We lost the video feed on our end. What did we see? We saw kids who had never been on an escalator before. We saw kids who had, there we go, got you back. We saw kids learn big lessons about the law. When I was walking through the White House with a group of 12, 13-year-olds, I was leading the group, and I turned around and I heard this big, deep voice, "Who's this young man's teacher?" And I saw one of my students spread-eagled and they were wanding him. They learned a big lesson there. You don't buy switchblade combs when you're going through the White House. But that was before all of the high security now. That was maybe 40 years ago or something. But they learned stuff about not making smart aleck remarks when you're walking through an airport.
My groups were older, were traveling international, and you learn so many things about, going across the border. What documents do you need? Going from Belize into Guatemala, we even had to pay the border guards that we were bribing them to get into the country.
So they came on the bus?
We also had, in that trip, we also had gang members come on the bus and tried to get the girls. So there's all kinds of things that happen. You have to be a risk taker to some extent to be able to do that. We're in the Caribbean and we're having kids get off a sailboat to go snorkel. You can't see land anywhere around. We're kind of out of ways. And 53 kids get in the water. The teachers look at each other and who's got the liability on this one? And we just kind of high five each other and jump in the water. Everybody survives. But the kids come back into the country after those trips, and they land at this huge airport, Houston or Dallas somewhere. And they look around and it's like, do we really need all of these things? Because they just experience people living up in the mountains in grass huts and dirt floors, cooking on a wood fire. And they start to analyze, what's important? What do we really need? So you're setting the future of these kids, where they're going to start questioning, hey, what's important? What's not important?
Is it really important to have refrigeration, or shall you just go ahead
Well,
and shoo those flies away off your fresh cut meat? Some of the kids really had their eyes opened with what we have here in the United States versus other countries.
Yeah, they really gain a different perspective on the world, really.
Yes.
They understand different cultures, different people groups, different social societal statuses. So I think it changes them forever. And the way I kind of explain it to people is uh, you go somewhere, and when you come back, you bring part of that with you. So it's like when you go to a different place and you experience different culture, part of that culture is now part of your soul. And it becomes part of you, becomes part of your memories. And that's really what I hope young people are able to experience. So, we talk about the future. I hope in the future, more students, more young people are able to experience travel, especially across the oceans and in South America, if they can. And the more third world they get, and the more they see that, the more appreciation they have for what they have, and the more appreciation they can have and for diversity, the differences of people, and really just a great appreciation for the world as we know it. So
Here's a shameless plug
yeah,
for Kansas State University.
yeah.
I had a Power Cat shirt on walking in a restaurant in Cape Town, South Africa. And this lady from across the restaurant runs over to me and she said, I studied there to learn to feed my people. Gave me a big hug, and it's like, whoa. Flash the Power Cat anywhere in the world, and somebody is going to have a link, have a reaction.
Well, and that's cross culture.
That's cross universities. That's cross, but it's like they remember. And that was a very emotional moment for me. And we were at a flea market kind of thing in St. Petersburg, Russia. And it was dirt, tin, just, and there were babushka dolls. You know what those are? The stacking dolls where the middle one is inside. And we found one with K-State players painted on it. The tiny one on the inside was Jordy Nelson. And then I got ripped off because we were using rubles and euros and pounds and dollars, and I didn't know which one he was negotiating with.
They were quickly moving between all four of them. So students can learn about different currencies and economies.
That was a huge lesson, how the money is different. 17 lempira in Costa Rica sounds like a lot. It's less than $1. So at that time it was. So currencies, the difference in currencies.
Well, Barry and Charlotte, thanks again for being a guest on the I Told You So podcast. I really appreciate the experiences that you've had together. I'll just say, you're the first married couple I've had on this podcast. I really appreciate that. And just congratulations to you on staying married for so long and having all these life experiences together and sharing those with the audience. Really appreciate it.
Been our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Yeah. So because this podcast is about predicting the future, my questions to those listening are, is watching a video on YouTube about a country or an experience from another person in another country, is that as good as going there? Should the new and evolving dangers to travelers be a deterrent for taking student groups? And do you, as a listener, know of a student who you could encourage to travel? In the words of Mark Twain, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. Another quote that I like, and I know the Schartz like as well, come from Ibn Battuta. He was a medieval Muslim traveler, and he said, traveling, it leaves you speechless, then turns you into a storyteller. So, Schartz, do you have any comments about those questions that I asked the listeners?
Just know that you haven't traveled until you've had to go with armed guards around you, or until you've had to be in a pirate drill on a cruise ship in the middle of Atlantic because there are pirate boats coming after your. Yeah, you haven't lived. Go there. Go there.
Well, there are places to go that are safe, you know.
Yes, yes, yes. Most of the places we went were perfectly safe.
Yeah.
Well, tongue in cheek on that one. But the thing of it is, right here in the United States is not the safest place to walk down the street.
And times are changing. Times are changing.
That's
So
right. Well, what I want from this is I want people to think about the future, and I want people to think about how they can enhance their future with traveling experiences, especially for the young people, the middle schoolers and the high schoolers, and those teachers and those college professors who take them on these trips, and they really ensure their safety on these trips. So if they have those experiences as young people to travel abroad, especially travel across the oceans and gain these experiences early in life, it just simply will make them better people. And that, to me, will give us all a better future. So, for those listeners, I asked those questions to you. I do want to know what you think about those questions. So, text or call me at 1-785-473-3721, or send an email message to me at ITYS at BenKohlITYS.com, or post on any of my social media channels. So I do ask you to go to the I Told You So podcast website, and that's at BenKohlITYS.com, and that's my name, BenKohlITYS.com. And you can go there to connect. You can go there to listen to the episodes of this podcast, and you can go there to go to the merchandise link and get shirts or hoodies or hats or coffee mugs and lots of other items. So the I Told You So podcast is, I hope, a space for healthy discourse and effective discussions with the goal of predicting the future so you can proudly say, I told you so. Also, if your business or organization is interested in advertising on the I Told You So podcast, please let me know that too. So thanks for tuning into the I Told You So podcast. And thanks again to my guests, Barry and Charlotte Schartz. Followers of the podcast are very important. So please follow, like, subscribe, leave a comment, give a high rating, and share with your friends. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Kohl, and I hope to hear from you soon.